My wife wanted to get rid of me and replace me with another guy when I had an accident, but I heard it all. They say your hearing is the last thing to go. I used to think that was just something people said to comfort the grieving. Now I know better, because I heard everything. I lay there, unmoving, unable to speak or open my eyes, but fully awake as my wife stood over my hospital bed and calmly told the doctor she was ready to let me go. 3 weeks ago, I was an ordinary man driving home from a coffee run on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. My name is Clarence, 39 years old, a steel technician out of central Pennsylvania. Been married to Lydia, 38, works as a radiology tech at a local clinic for over a decade. No kids. Just us and a golden retriever named Jasper. We were comfortable, if not exactly the romantic picture you'd see on a greeting card. We paid the mortgage on time, vacationed twice a year, laughed over burnt toast and bad movies. I thought we were doing okay. In hindsight, I see the cracks, but back then, I wasn't looking. The accident happened on Route 30. I was less than a mile from home, sipping on a lukewarm macchiato and listening to an audiobook when a lifted Dodge truck blew through a red light. They said he was going 60 in a 35. My sedan didn't stand a chance. I don't remember the impact. 1 second I was reaching for my turn signal, the next I was drowning in silence, as if the world had been muted. Then came the slow return of sound, the soft humming of machines, the rhythmic blip of a heart monitor, the occasional murmur of nurses' voices. I wasn't unconscious, not really. What I experienced, I later learned, is called covert consciousness, a rare condition where the brain is aware, but the body is completely unresponsive. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even open my eyelids. But I heard every word. At first, it was uneventful. Nurses came and went. A physician would give updates aloud, maybe out of habit, maybe out of hope that somewhere in my mind I was still listening. My sister, Marianne, visited every day. She talked about her new teaching job, her rescue cat, the lemon cake she baked last weekend. Lydia was different. She visited too, at first. She held my hand, whispered things I couldn't respond to, wept quietly. Or at least, it seemed that way until the 5th day. It was early. I could tell by the stiffness in my limbs and the change in the sounds around me, fewer people, more ambient machines. Lydia came into the room. I knew her walk, the distinct way her shoes tapped lightly on the tile floor. She was speaking with a doctor whose voice I hadn't heard before. A woman. It started normal. Updates on my vitals. Still unresponsive, but brain scans show activity, the doctor said. I was hopeful maybe they'd wait, give me a chance. Then Lydia's tone shifted. She mentioned insurance. Bills. How long-term care might not be feasible. The doctor, sounding cautious, replied that I hadn't been unresponsive long enough to make any permanent decisions. Then Lydia lowered her voice. I'm not sure he would want to live like this, she said. He always told me he wouldn't want to be a burden. A pause. Then the words that crushed me. If he stays like this, I think it's kinder to let him go. I'm still young. I could start over. I wanted to scream. Wanted to sit up and tell them I was right there. But I was still frozen, locked in that unresponsive shell. The doctor didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was slow and careful. Mrs. Langley, that's not a decision we make lightly. Especially not this early. Your husband is showing signs of neural activity. That gives us hope. But Lydia kept pushing. It's not just about me. He wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want to be stuck like this for years. I'd never felt more helpless in my life. After they left, the room was quiet again, but my mind was racing. What had I missed? Were there signs this was coming? And how could someone I loved so much be so ready to let me go? In the days that followed, her visits became more performative. She still brought flowers, still held my hand, but her phone was always in her other hand. I'd hear her texting someone named Seth. The messages she read aloud to herself didn't match the ones I heard her typing. One afternoon, she told someone on the phone that she was starting to accept it, that this might be a blessing in disguise. I memorized every word. Burned them into my mind. Then, something changed. About 10 days after the accident, I could move the smallest toe on my left foot. No one noticed at first. But that small flicker of motion ignited a fire in me. The next day, my fingers twitched. Then I blinked. The doctor noticed. Tests were ordered. Nurses were cautiously optimistic. Lydia was absent that day. She had a spa appointment, according to a nurse. When I finally regained the ability to speak, it was Marianne who heard my first word. She cried so hard, the nurse came running in. I haven't told anyone what I heard. Not yet. Lydia came in the next morning, tearful and overjoyed. She hugged me tightly, spoke about miracles and second chances. She kissed my forehead and said, I was so scared I'd lose you. I said nothing. Just smiled faintly. Let her believe I didn't remember. But I do. Every word. Every whisper. Every plan she made to move on without me. And now that I'm awake, I have choices to make. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, listening to the faint beeping of machines and distant hallway chatter. Every breath felt heavier than the last, not from pain, but from the knowledge I now carried. Lydia had already said goodbye to me. And worse, she'd started imagining a life that didn't include me at all. For the nurses, the day I first spoke was a celebration. For my sister, it was a moment of overwhelming relief. But for me? It was the quiet beginning of something else entirely. A reckoning. Lydia returned the next morning, dressed casually in a beige sweater and jeans. Her hair was freshly styled. She carried a thermos of coffee and a sunflower from the garden. It all seemed so carefully curated. She looked radiant. And rehearsed. Clarence, she whispered as she approached the bed. Oh, thank God. She kissed my cheek, held my hand, and brushed her fingers through my hair. I stared at her without speaking. I wanted to see what she would say, unprompted. I was so afraid, she continued. They didn't know if you'd come back to me. But you did. She smiled. You always pull through. Her eyes didn't quite match her tone. They flickered, as if searching my face for signs of what I might remember. I gave her nothing. Just a small smile and a tired blink. Do you remember anything? She asked softly. I shook my head, just a slow, deliberate motion. She exhaled. Maybe that's for the best, she said, almost to herself. Later, I told the nurse that I was still foggy, still piecing things together. It wasn't entirely a lie. Physically, I was weak. My body had been through trauma I was only beginning to understand. But mentally, I was clear, more focused than I'd ever been. The days that followed were a strange mix of medical assessments, cautious optimism, and subtle observation. I watched Lydia closely. I began to catalog her patterns. She rarely stayed more than 30 minutes. She never left her phone unattended. She flinched slightly whenever Marianne entered the room, as if caught doing something she shouldn't be. Once, she stepped into the hallway to take a call. She must have thought the door had shut completely behind her, but I could still hear her voice. No, not yet, she whispered. He's still healing. I don't know, Seth. We'll figure it out. Just be patient. The next few days, I asked Marianne to bring me my laptop and phone. She hesitated at first. The doctors had recommended rest, but eventually agreed when I told her I wanted to journal my experience while it was still fresh. The moment I opened my email, I found something unusual. Lydia had changed several of our shared account passwords. Not just Netflix or Spotify banking, utilities, our retirement account logins. It was subtle, but intentional. Almost like she'd been preparing to take control of everything. Preparing for a future without me. That night, when she left the hospital, I called Marianne. I need your help, I told her. She came the next morning with a small, discreet flash drive and a knowing look. We were always close, but something about this brought us even closer, like she understood something was wrong before I ever said a word. I explained everything. What I'd heard. What Lydia had said. The way she pushed the doctor. The phone calls to someone named Seth. Marianne didn't look surprised. Sad, maybe, but not surprised. I always felt something was off this past year, she said quietly. Lydia's been different. Together, we started documenting everything. Marianne pulled the security footage from the hospital's hallway cameras. She had contacts from her brief time working as a hospital admin. One clip showed Lydia entering my room just before the conversation with the doctor. Another showed her leaving moments after, on the phone and smiling. It wasn't damning on its own, but it matched the timeline. Then came the message records. I found several messages in our mobile account summary from a number saved as SR, hundreds of texts in the past 2 months. It didn't take long to realize that Seth was the person Lydia had been texting while I was in a coma. The timestamps aligned perfectly with her hospital visits. I stared at those records for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she had been grieving in her own way. Maybe Seth was just a friend offering comfort. But then I saw the hotel reservation. Her credit card statement showed a charge from a boutique hotel in Harrisburg for 2 nights. The date? Just 4 days after my accident. I didn't want to believe it. But I couldn't deny it. She had moved on before I ever had the chance to wake up. When I confronted the doctor, Dr. Forrester, the woman who had spoken with Lydia, she didn't give many details. Patient confidentiality worked both ways, after all. But I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She had concerns, Dr. Forrester said carefully. But I want you to know, no decision would have been made without further evaluation. You were showing signs of awareness, even if others couldn't see it. She wanted to let me go, I said. The doctor looked away. She was under a great deal of stress. I nodded. That much was true. But there's a difference between stress and detachment. A few days later, I was well enough to be transferred to a rehabilitation facility across town. Lydia offered to help with the move, but I declined. I'd prefer Marianne handle it, I said. Her smile faltered just a little. But she nodded. Of course. Whatever you need. I could see her working to figure out how much I remembered, how much I knew. But I gave her nothing. I wasn't ready yet. I needed time. Not just to heal, but to prepare. In rehab, I focused on rebuilding my strength. Quiet mornings became my refuge. I'd write notes in a journal Lydia gave me years ago, ironically, a gift for our 5th anniversary. I filled it with facts, thoughts, memories. I wrote everything she said in the hospital room. I logged every bank account adjustment. I printed the hotel receipt, the phone records. Marianne helped me create a secure cloud folder with everything backed up 3 times. Lydia kept visiting. She brought takeout from my favorite Thai place. She shared articles about miraculous recoveries. She told me how much she missed me at home. But I saw the flicker of worry behind her eyes. She was waiting for the moment I said, I remember. That moment hasn't come yet. But it will. And when it does, I'll be ready. The funny thing about pretending is that the longer you do it, the better you get at it. By the 3rd week of my rehabilitation, I had become a master of smiling at the right time, nodding with the right tone, and asking Lydia all the right questions, the kind that made it seem like I still trusted her, like I hadn't heard her ask a doctor to end my life. She'd show up with flowers and soup, or sometimes something she baked, and I'd thank her with a gentle voice and make small talk about how the therapy was going. I'd ask about Jasper, our dog, even though I already knew Marianne had taken him in. Lydia hadn't once asked how he was doing since the accident. Maybe she didn't notice. Maybe she assumed he'd still be there when she came home. Or maybe, like everything else, she had already started counting the parts of our life together as disposable. I was regaining strength. My therapists were encouraged. I was walking short distances, feeding myself, and soon I'd be discharged. At night, I'd stare out the window of my rehab room, watching the streetlights flicker on, thinking about how to transition from passive observer to active participant in my own life again. It was time to act. The first step was regaining access to what had once been ours. I started small. A password reset here, a changed security question there. I didn't want to tip my hand too soon, so I avoided the joint account we'd used for daily expenses. Instead, I opened a new checking account in a different bank entirely, one Lydia didn't know I had history with. I had my disability checks rerouted there. I sold a few personal items I had kept in storage, a vintage camera, some woodworking tools, and funneled the proceeds into that account too. Next came the legal side. I needed someone who wouldn't just listen, but believe me. Through Marianne, I found an attorney. Her name was Gretchen Tyler, and from the moment I met her, I knew she understood. She'd handled difficult cases before: uncooperative spouses, hidden assets, quiet manipulation. I told her the story in full detail. Not just about the accident, but about Lydia's words, her behavior, the phone records, the financial shifts. I haven't confronted her yet, I admitted. Gretchen raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because right now, I said, she thinks I don't remember anything. That's what's keeping her calm. That's what's keeping her from running. The attorney nodded, taking notes. So what do you want to do? I want to leave, I said. Clean. No screaming matches, no house fights, no long battles over things. I just want my life back. And I want to do it in a way that she won't see coming. That, Gretchen said, I can help you with. Over the next 2 weeks, I put the plan in motion. I didn't go back to our house. I told Lydia that the rehab center had advised me to transition to a quieter space, just for a month or so, to ease back into daily life without too much pressure. She agreed quickly. Too quickly. That's a great idea, she said, already scrolling through her phone. You need peace. I want you to be completely well. It occurred to me then that she probably hoped I'd never return to the house. Which worked perfectly. The place I moved into wasn't much, just a one-bedroom apartment above a retired mechanic's shop, but it was mine. I signed the lease under my full name and paid the first 2 months in advance. I told Lydia it was a wellness retreat funded by my insurance. She never asked to see it. I changed all my passwords. Cancelled all unnecessary subscriptions. Started ordering groceries from a new delivery service so there'd be no overlap with our previous accounts. The only thing I kept the same was the coffee. I couldn't give that up. The more I separated myself, the more she noticed, but in all the wrong ways. She didn't ask how I was sleeping. She didn't ask if I was adjusting to being on my own. She only asked vague questions. Have you thought more about coming home? When do you think we can talk about us? Do you still see us together? I answered softly. I gave her vague reassurances, told her I was still sorting through things emotionally. What I was really doing was taking inventory of our marriage, of our finances, of her intentions. And then something happened that changed everything. One morning, while checking my backup email, an old account I hadn't used in years, I found a message that Lydia had accidentally copied me on. It was from a shared Dropbox folder we'd used a long time ago to store documents. She must have forgotten it was still linked. The email included a PDF with notes. A typed-out outline. It looked like something between a to-do list and a letter draft. At the top, it said, "Steps for when Clarence is gone." I sat frozen for a long time before opening it. There were bullet points. Update the house deed. Cancel shared credit card. Move things into storage. Consider selling Clarence's workshop tools. Reach out to Seth's realtor friend. My name appeared on the list like I was a line item. Like I had already been erased. What chilled me wasn't just the callousness, it was the date. It had been created 5 days before my accident. I saved the file. Uploaded it to my encrypted cloud folder. Sent a copy to Gretchen. That night, I stared at the ceiling again, just like I had those nights in the hospital. Only this time, I wasn't paralyzed. I wasn't helpless. I was fully in control. I picked up my phone and dialed Lydia. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart," she said brightly. "Everything okay?" I paused. "I think we should have dinner," I said. "There's something I've been wanting to talk about." I met Lydia at a small cafe on the edge of town. Not the one we used to go to. That place had too many memories of birthdays, rainy mornings, and slow Sundays filled with crossword puzzles. No, this one was new to me. Neutral ground. Nothing sentimental. She arrived exactly on time. Not early. Not late. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the gray coat I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago. She looked like herself. Or rather, the version of her that had learned how to look composed when necessary. "Clarence," she said, smiling carefully. "You look better." I nodded. "Thanks. Therapy's working." We ordered tea. She didn't touch hers. There was a silence between us, not awkward, just full. Full of everything that hadn't been said yet. I let it stretch a little longer. I wanted to see if she'd fill it. She did. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice light, "maybe this time apart has been good. Given us space to reflect. I know things have been difficult, and I've made mistakes. But we've come so far together. 10 years, Clarence. That has to count for something." I nodded slowly, stirring my tea even though I had no intention of drinking it. "You're right," I said. 10 years is a long time. You really get to know someone in that kind of time. She looked relieved. Maybe she thought we were on the same page. "You know," I continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking too. About everything. The accident, recovery, our marriage." She leaned forward just a little. "I want us to move forward, Clarence. I really do." I looked her in the eye. "I remember what you said." Her breath caught. Her posture changed. The smile faltered just enough for me to notice. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "In the hospital. The conversation you had with the doctor. You didn't know I could hear you, but I did." She sat very still. I could hear the faint clinking of cutlery from another table. Outside, a bus rolled past with a quiet sigh of brakes. "I don't." You said, if he stays like this, just pull the plug. I'm young. I can find someone else. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand to stop her. I've gone over those words 1,000 times, I said. At first, I tried to explain them away. Shock. Grief. Panic. But they weren't said in grief, Lydia. They were calculated. Calm. Like you were already planning what came next. Clarence, I also know about Seth. That silenced her. Her eyes dropped to the table. I know about the messages. The calls. The hotel. The Dropbox document you forgot to unshare. Her eyes widened. For the first time in weeks, I saw the real Lydia, not the smiling visitor, not the anxious wife. Just the person behind all of it. It wasn't like that, she said, finally. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle it. And Seth, he was just someone I talked to. I didn't think you were coming back. 4 days, Lydia. It took you 4 days to check out of our marriage. Her shoulders slumped. I made a mistake. No, I said quietly. You made a decision. And now I have to. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a printed copy of the divorce paperwork, prepared, signed, notarized. The only thing missing was her signature. I've already moved out. I've closed the joint accounts. You can keep the house if you want it, I just want it behind me. Everything that was ours is now yours. I don't want the memories. She flipped through the pages slowly, as if still hoping they would vanish. Clarence. I was overwhelmed. I never wanted to hurt you. I leaned back. Then you shouldn't have tried to bury me while I was still breathing. She didn't cry. Lydia wasn't someone who cried when cornered. But her hands trembled as she reached into her purse for a pen. Without looking at me, she signed every page. When she slid the folder back, her voice was barely audible. What are you going to tell people? The truth, I said. But not all of it. Just enough. She gave a tiny nod. It was the first honest gesture I'd seen from her since waking up. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. Clarence, do you hate me? I paused. The question deserved more than a knee-jerk answer. No, I said. I don't hate you. I just can't love someone who gave up on me before the machines did. We walked out separately. I didn't look back. Life after Lydia was quieter than I expected. Peaceful, in a way that felt earned. My new apartment wasn't much, but I started to make it mine. Marianne came by every few days with groceries or a puzzle book. Jasper snored loudly in the corner most nights, a comforting presence that needed nothing but a warm space and my occasional dropped snack. I got back into woodworking. Simple things at first. A shelf. A birdhouse. A small bench I gave to my neighbor, who reminded me of my grandfather. The routine became healing. Early mornings. Long walks. Cooking meals for one without feeling lonely. I downloaded a meditation app. I even started journaling, something I'd never done before the accident. Turns out, your thoughts hit differently when you're forced to live with them in silence. There are still bad nights. Flashbacks. Times when I wake up in a cold sweat, certain that I'm back in that hospital room, unable to move, waiting to be erased. But those nights come less often now. And when they do, I breathe through them. A month after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter from Lydia. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. Short. Just 7 words. I'm sorry. I hope you're well. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need to. I had already found my peace. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.